Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the Honda 300 build on Mudlick Creek Garage. So what we got going on today is we're going to reassemble the front end of this bike, and we are going to get started on the electrical. So here we go. So we have the front end of the bike cleaned up and painted, and we've came in here and we've cleaned up the cuts I had to do with the plasma there. Not perfect. Then I came in and I have put in a new skid plate piece that's a piece of 3/16 channel steel welded solid. So we should not have any issues with that. I am going to drill a hole in the back here so that water can drain, and then I will drill another hole here in the skid plate for the differential drain. So I'd love to do a time lapse, but it's about 20 degrees outside and the GoPro is gonna die as soon as I start one. So I'll bring you back when the differential and the front drive shaft is in. So I have the differential mounted back in the machine, and I am gonna be transparent about it because the idea of this series is if one of you guys wants to try it on your own, you're not afraid of it. Do not weld a plate on the bottom, because I had to cut part of that plate out to fit the diff down in it. I'm gonna have to come up with something here as a skid plate to protect the bottom of this differential. Other than that, it seemed to go in pretty easy. Drive shafts all painted in, looking good. Vent ready to be ran. All that stuff is in the mail. Yeah, so we're gonna put the A-arms on. So an important message for you guys is grease your axle splines. Do not install these dry. I would probably say a good 50% of the time people have issues getting these axles back out is because they installed them dry. So take your grease gun and put a few pumps of grease on these axles. First step is going to be install the lower A-arm. So we'll put our misalignment spacers in, start with the rear. Of course I painted it so they're going to fit a little tighter than usual. Now when I took these apart, I did not I did not change the adjustment. So these should be the same adjustment they were when I took them apart last, or when I put them together. Come on. All right, so for now we're gonna leave them loose. Now we'll put our axle shaft in, greased, remember. Slide it all the way in. Sorry, you guys took a tumble. So next we're going to install our hub. Now is a good time, if you have it apart, to do your wheel bearings. This one I just pressed a new wheel bearing in and new seals. We'll bring our... Also, if you need ball joints, now is the perfect time to do it with the machine in pieces. Start our nut on the ball joint. Now we'll do the upper A-arm. Again, I did not mess with these adjusters, so if you did not mess with the adjusters, you do not need to, well, adjust them. Put our misalignment spacers on. And of course, on a stock bike, you're not going to have Hines and misalignment spacers. You're going to have stock factory bushings. But that being said, most of you that would even venture to do this kind of swap probably are running some sort of arched arm because you're quite invested in a 300. And grand scheme of things, what's another $1,000 for a differential? This rear bolt's kind of a pain. Sorry you couldn't see that well what we had going on there. But now we're going to make sure our axle is seated in our hub. And we're going to install our upper ball joints. Slide that in there. Take our castle nut. Now the uppers are kind of a pain because you have to start them prior to seating them. So now, we'll fast forward you through this because you don't want to watch me tighten bolts. But we'll tighten everything and we'll be back. So now that we have all those bolts to the German torque spec of good and tight, now we're going to install our hub into our bearing. Now, remember, these axles are, from part one, almost bottomed out. So you're gonna have to work them a little bit, but they'll never be at this bottomed out, bottomed out scenario. They'll never be like this. So now, we put on our axle nut. All right, and now remember, I'm not gonna do it for the sake of time in these videos, but you do have to put a cotter key in both ball joints and the axle nut. Now, we're gonna install our tie rod. Now, these aftermarket tie rods use a Heim and a 3/4 inch bolt. Get these tightened down. Next step, we're going to put on the upper shock mount, or upper shock. Next, we're going to put on the shock. I did go through and paint these shocks black. If you have a nice machine that's really pretty, I would definitely not paint them black. I would, get a nice pair of shocks. And I am going to come back through and I'm going to add washers on these to space them out. I don't have any right now, so we're going to get all these tightened down within reason, and we'll do the other side and we'll be back. The machine is now on the ground. Both arms are on, tightened down, tires are on, all squared away, good to go. Actually, if you've seen my short, it's already been for a ride around the yard. In two-wheel drive mode, of course. So, at this point, we're gonna rerun all new vent lines throughout the machine, clean up, because the old ones were starting to crack. They're 25 years old. So, what we have is 7/64 line to replace all the old factory stuff. Then we have 1/8 inch line for the 400EX carburetor. And we have 3/16 line for the Polaris differential. So let's get those ran. I have a majority of the vent lines ran. I did, although, forget that on the 400EX carb, it is 3/16 for the vent line size. So I need to get another section of 3/16, just like the front diff, and run that. But I have the transfer case and the rear differential plumbed with the 7/64, and my crankcase vent just runs right from the vent on the case and it goes into my air box. Now, you can do this with your factory air box. You're gonna wanna use I believe it's a 1/2 inch, double check on the forums. But This is a Chaos off-road box. Do I like it? Do I not like it? It's really up in the air. I am happy with the quality of the box itself. I'm not very happy with the powder coat or the customer service I received when I purchased it. But that's water under the bridge. If you folks like it, go out, purchase it, support him. He's a great guy from what I can tell. But yeah, so vent lines are on, ran. The electric is up here to a pigtail. I am going to change that out and run this nicer. But my electrical components apparently aren't going to be here for another month. So what I plan on doing is I ordered more of these buttons because this is a momentary. I'm going to get 2 latching, and I'm going to do the headlights because I'm going to run pod headlights on it, and 4-wheel drive because it's just a 12 volt on, 12 volt off. I'm going to wire the rings around them because they're lighted rings to the reverse, neutral, and high oil temperature, and then use the buttons to actuate the functions. Also, I have this momentary because I'm going to eliminate the handlebar switch, and I'm going to do that as my starter because this handlebar switch has seen better days, and I'm already not running the choke because I'm running the 400EX carb. So all right, everyone, I think that's going to close out part 2. I know this video I didn't get nearly as much done as I had wished, but the machine's back together. It's theoretically rideable if it needs to move from the spot it's in, and we started to get the snorkel all squared away. I would have the snorkel back on, but somebody forgot to paint it, i.e. me. So it's 10 degrees outside and I just painted it. So it'll be a while before it dries. So all right, thank you everybody, and see you next time on Mudlick Creek Garage.